Hello, everyone. I am so excited today to be joined by Laura. Laura is a money and life coach, and her and I have done a mentorship together for about the last year or so. And we were chatting that our core premise of our message is very similar. So we thought we would just record an interview about it. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So excited to have you. Do you want to tell everyone briefly before we kick off a bit about what you do?
Sure. Like you said, I'm a life and money coach. I primarily work with women at midlife. So most of my clients are between 45 and 55. I do have a couple men too, but I primarily work with women. And a lot of what I do is help them take control of their money lives for the first time. A lot of them have sort of ignored money for a long time, but it gets to the point where they realize they really need to. And so we tackle that wherever they need to start. And often it's with like earning more money. That's usually where we start.
Awesome. So what we were going to talk about, but we'll see where we end up going, something that we thought we had in common is this whole premise of busy versus productive. And I'll start from my point of view and what I see in the weight industry, and then you can weigh in, no pun intended, with the money, because it's very, very similar. How you do one thing is how you do most things. So I think what we were talking about, did you come to my masterclass? Is that how we got onto this? I can't remember now.
No, we were talking about it before.
Yeah, okay, cool. Because I talked about it very similarly. So a lot of people with their weight feel like they're doing everything. And it's no judgment, because when something is on our mind a lot, when we wake up in the morning, it's the first thing we think of, like, please, can my fat pants fit today? Or I'm going to see somebody I haven't seen in so long. Are they going to comment on my weight? Or I have to step up into a new position or a new role, and I'm worried my competency will be judged about my weight. It can feel like we're doing all the things because we're thinking about it all the time. And that's exhausting. But just because we're thinking about it doesn't mean we're actually actioning, taking even baby steps. Because the other thing that can happen with this busy versus productive, if we're not doing everything, like all the things, it's this all or nothing, black or white. I'm sure you see it with money as well. And we kind of discount the baby steps. Like what would that possibly do? That's such a small thing. If I'm drinking 8 cups of coffee a day and I'm going to cut to 7, what's one less cup of coffee going to do? So yeah, how do you see that, or how does that play out with your clients?
Very similarly, because I work with women, a lot of them have kids who are in various stages of growing up, and they're super busy. They're doing a lot of things, taking care of the kids, or just like family administration is how I think of it sometimes, like all those, the invisible work that has to be done, and it falls a lot of times to women. So it feels like they're very busy, like they're calling the insurance company, they're calling the doctor, they're dealing with the bills, they're doing all these things, but they aren't necessarily focused on things around like earning money. So like I said, we start often with earning money. So a lot of times my clients will come and say, this was my week, I did all these things. And I'll say, highlight in green the ones that are income producing. Sometimes there isn't anything on the list.
Yes. And I love how you said, how did you word it? The phrase you used is dropped from my conscious now, but emotional labor, I've heard it called. And when I heard that term, it was like a game changer for me, because we discount the things like running the kids around, paying the bills, making the appointments, getting a haircut, like the things that have to happen. Just before we jumped on here, I was quickly doing a load of washing,
Yes.
And then we can fill our time up with busy things that also need to be done. But there is a line, and it's very hard and it's different for everyone, between where we're actually busy because the things need to be done, or we're busy as a way of avoiding doing the work. And as you said, is this income producing? I loved how you said highlighting green, because green makes me think of money.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, totally. So what do you think that is? Like sometimes where we draw that line between, because like sometimes, and I know I do it too, I'm not immune, we'll avoid the directly income producing things. It's like, I don't want to ask for the money. I don't want to send the invoice. What if they say no? Like all this stuff comes up. I'll just go and clean the pantry.
Right, right. If my house is ever clean, I'm avoiding something that I don't want to do.
Exactly.
That's when I clean. But no, it's exactly that. And I think there is a reality of family life. There's a lot to be done for sure, but it's comfortable. It's something we know how to do. We don't always like it, but we know how to do it. Whereas asking for the business, writing a proposal and sending it is much harder. You're putting yourself out there. It's much more vulnerable. You know, asking for a raise, it's much harder. Negotiating for a better deal is much harder. So there is that avoidance, understandable, because we're talking about something that's difficult that also as women, we tend not to be trained to do. Like men are taught
Yes.
from an earlier age, like ask for the money. We're taught to be nice. There's that piece about that you and I both have in common around like overgiving. Like, you know,
Yes.
it's like, oh, I was going to write that proposal, but my daughter needed me to help her with her script. Like it's like
Are
she's
you
in
in
a
my
play.
house?
Yes, exactly. It's like I needed to run lines with my daughter, so I missed the deadline. Like that kind of thing. So
Yes. And I
there's
think
a lot
that,
about that. Go ahead.
sorry, something you touched on there, nice. Like, we are taught to be nice. And I think the for me, my own work in the past couple of months has been the difference between kind and nice. I'm always kind. And
Love
as
that.
Brene Brown says, clear is kind. And that's why having really clear boundaries is so powerful. But I'm no longer the nice girl, because it just doesn't get you anywhere. And then
Mm.
for me, I end up feeling resentful, not outwardly, I would never say it, but in my head, the seething resentment, and then ends up to eating. So, yeah,
Right.
like I think there's that, and we aren't taught, particularly as women. And as you said, men ask for the money, women be nice.
Mhm.
It's very curious. It's society, and I think that's shifting. I know certainly for my kids, watching them, the way they're educated, and my part in educating them is very, very different. But something you touched on, you said writing a proposal. So this always
Mhm.
interests me personally. So I was like, oh, I'll ask you about this. When you're writing a proposal, that can be a lot of emotional labor. Like, it's not just a copy paste. You want to meet the specs, and you want to address what the client or the prospective client actually wants. But
Right.
sometimes you don't hear back. So then it's the awkward dance of, how long do I message? I don't want to look needy or pushy, but I don't want to be ignorant. And then, have you got any advice for people in that aspect? Love to hear your.
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation. If you've already got an established relationship with the person who's expecting the proposal, then it's different than if you're just like coldly sending out a proposal. If you have an established relationship, then I usually say, it doesn't hurt to check back in. It doesn't hurt to let them know that you're busy. Like, if you've made particular room for possible body of work, it doesn't hurt to let them know I'm saving space for this. Where do we stand? As opposed to, oh, I'm just free anytime. I'll wait and hear back. So if you get back to a year and a half from now, cool. So
I laugh, but it happens. And I love how you say, like, to be that, then that's the clear is kind. I'm holding space, or I'll hold this space and give them a deadline. And I think sometimes we feel that that's pushy, or we feel that that's, can't think of the term, but it is being clear, because especially if it's one-on-one work,
right.
or work where there's a limited capacity, we're not that there's only one of us. So sometimes, and I think that
Yeah.
is the clarity on the person receiving the proposal as well. It's like, I need to action this by this date. I had an example of that this week. I'd applied to go on a podcast. I hadn't heard back, so I thought, oh well, I didn't make it. It was in my junk. I usually check my
Oh,
spam mail more often, but I saw it there and I was like, oh, it's been 10 days. I might have missed the boat, because they said they only had 10 spaces. So I just wrote back and said, look, if I've missed the boat, I totally understand, but sorry, it was in my junk. But
yeah.
I think, yeah, having that clear thing, because otherwise people don't know. And also too, the other thing I want to ask, because with pricing and money, sometimes if they do, you said a year and a half, and I laugh, but that's happened to me more than
Yeah.
once. Your prices may very well be quite different in a year and a half. How do you navigate? Like, do you say, when you give the quote, this price is until like the end of the month or the end of the next month, I give it a deadline?
Yeah.
Because I've had people coming back
Or
wanting.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
or subject to change after a certain date.
Subject to change. I like that. Because, yeah, do you find women, have you had that with people negotiate, they come back significant amount of time later and then going, oh, well, is this much? And you're like, actually, it's not anymore.
Oh, yeah, I've had people come back 2 years later. Like I've been thinking about this and I'm finally ready. And it's like, that's great. I'm so glad to hear from you. But now we need to talk about what the parameters would be now. Like my time has shifted, my price has shifted. So what I'm offering is shifted usually.
Sounds so good. It's so funny when someone else says it. It sounds really cool. I'm like, I have to watch this back with a pen and paper. But I don't know. I assume your clients are saying when we go to say it, it's kind of like, uh. Anyway, this is getting off topic. Back to the busy versus productive. But this can be another part of the busy. You get the message back, and you just like you don't know how to have that conversation. So you kind of put off putting back, or put off getting back, or put
Yeah.
off getting back. And then it becomes really awkward. So then you just want to honor it because it's been so long, and it's just it ends up in this big mess, which I'm sure you see a lot of.
Yeah, I think part of it, and one of the things I encourage my clients to do, and as women in business, I think we forget sometimes, is to think of it as like a business for one thing, and you as a professional. So when clients sometimes will like they'll send me emails sometimes, difficult emails to write, because and that this becomes part of the busy. You spend a lot of time working on a particular email because you have something difficult to say. And it'll be this long meandering thing that's like, I suggest perhaps we might whatever. And I'll say, why not? It's my policy that, or typically with clients, this is what I do. Or, like, how would your doctor write that to you? Like, if you violated a policy in their practice, or you wanted something that wasn't part of their scope, like, how would they state it? Like, how would another professional state it? Go from that place. And it cuts down on some of that busy
That's
because
brilliant. And
that's really clear.
I love how you said that because the messages is my personal kryptonite, because it's like I don't want to say it like that because it might come across as harsh. I don't want to write too much because I don't want to assume they have all the time. I don't want to write too little and they assume that I'm being short with them, because there's a tone, an assumed tone in messages. It's like there was no smiley face, or there was no love afterwards, so she must be in a bad mood, or like, especially because I'm the exclamation little love heart kind of queen. Um, I love personally voice note because I can say it so much faster. You hear the tone, like the tonality, as opposed to, because yes could be yeah sure, or yeah sure, or like in a written, and also to other person their mood when they're reading it as well. So I absolutely, for my clients, love voice note because I can say it succinctly. I don't have to think, overthink, write, rewrite, whatever. But
Right.
I think that's the busy versus productive. And what works for you? Or what do you think about templated answers?
Yeah, I actually strongly encourage those with clients. That it's a game changer because it takes away from that busy, but also you've worked on it once and really worked at whatever you want to say for around specific, because a lot of the questions you get are the same, right? Like I'm sure it's true with you, it's true for me too with clients. A lot of the questions are the same. So if I've written it once, I usually save it and create a template out of it. And I encourage my clients to do the same thing.
Yeah, I've only recently started doing that, and then I obviously tweak to be the answer. But
Mhm.
it's so much time saving because yeah, a lot of things are very, very similar, and the mental space in the busy. So it's like I spent all day writing one email. It's like that
Right.
wasn't very productive.
Right. And it was a beautiful email. but, but yeah, it's particularly if you're giving out the same resources over and over again, it's great just to have that in an email already, so you're not having to reinvent that.
Yes, yes, totally. So, at the beginning with your intro, money and life coach. So, are they intertwined, or do you have two different types of clients? I'm curious.
I have one type of client really right now, and they're intertwined, and in part because I find it's funny, but I find as people get better with dealing with their money, or sort of standing in who they are and dealing with their money, a lot of things in their life get better. And sometimes a little bit unsettled because they're starting to set boundaries in a way that they hadn't before. So they're setting boundaries around money, but that spills over into the other areas. So we end up working on those as well. And a lot of my clients, interestingly enough, do things like lose weight. Like that's not why they're working with me, but they start to value themselves in a different way and start
Yes.
thinking differently. And it bleeds over into weight loss.
And I find that because it is like, I think Tony Robbins said it originally, or someone, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Don't totally agree with that. How you do one thing is how you do most things. So when
Right.
you start setting boundaries around your money, or start setting boundaries around your eating, or start setting boundaries around your time, it does, as you said, bleed over into other areas of your life. And this transition period, have you read anything of Martha Beck's?
Yeah. Yeah. I've met her actually.
Oh my goodness! I have such FOMO. Do you know
When
her
she
empty
before she was
elevator?
really famous, but yeah, but go ahead.
Her empty elevator concept?
I don't know if I know that one. Tell me.
That's been a game changer for me. It's something I share with my clients. So in the beginning, before you start your personal development work or your shift anytime in your life, you have an elevator full of people. In Australia, we call it a lift, but we get the concept of an elevator. So you have your friends and your family and all this sort of stuff. As you start to change, so you put the boundaries in, or you have new interests or whatever, sometimes you have to clear people out of your elevator to allow new people to come in, people who are more aligned or people who are fit. And so an elevator goes between floors. So if you've cleared everybody out here, for a little while, you're on your own until you get to the next floor to allow more people in. And that can be the really scary, confronting, lonely part of the journey, because it's like, I'm on my own for a bit, but it's like more people will come who are aligned to who you are now, once you reach the new floor. I've probably butchered it, but that's how I think of it in my head, and it's really freeing, because for me personally, I used to be like, I weighed twice what I did now. You have the concept of being the fat friend, the person who doesn't have their shit together, and that's comfortable for people, like, because that's how you relate to each other. And then as you start to change, it's not like you're saying you need to go and do this, but people feel confronted, because when someone changes, it's a mirror to where they may want to change, or how they I can't describe it very, very well, but sometimes there can be this tension here. And it's the same with business. I was, for a couple of years, what I call a wantrepreneur. I had a business. No, I had an expensive hobby.
Right, right.
But when it was like, actually, no, this is not like my little hobby anymore. This is a business. Same sort, another elevator moment. And then even when you go from startup business to like scale and you becoming bigger, another elevator moment. And in our lives, there's so many different things to transition, and this busy productive can keep coming up, because for me, busy can be, responding to Facebook comments, or scrolling Facebook groups, or doing things like that, which I say, like, I'm getting myself out there. No, I'm actually avoiding doing my own
Right.
work.
Yep. Yeah, I find, like, clients will spend a lot of time on a blog post, for example, and they may or may not publish it. It's like when they aren't doing the other things that could potentially earn income. Um, but I think you're right. And there's that thing about nice, like, do nice girls ask for money? Like, we weren't necessarily raised, at least in my, I'm in my 50s. Like, at my time, my generation of women, we weren't. We weren't. And I think you're right. It is changing. I think that's actually why some of the women who come to me have been inspired by their daughters who are in their 20s. And they watch their daughters now, graduating college and entering the world and negotiating for money. And they come to me and say, I could never do that. Like, I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, I want to be able to do that. Like, how do I do that? So I've had quite a few women who've been completely inspired by their daughters, which I think is awesome. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Our kids, I think they say they're our biggest teachers. I know for me with my weight, I was inspired by my children. Part of me, like, I didn't want them to grow up with the fat mother stigma, because I was super morbidly obese. It's not a judgment. It was the way it was. But I didn't want them to have the relationship with food that I had. And we teach, but people learn by modeling. So, if I'm saying have these vegetables and whatever, and then I'm scarfing chocolate in the cupboard, they just know.
Oh, yeah.
But the other thing that I learned from my children is children eat when they're hungry and stop when they're full naturally. They've just had enough and they stop eating. And I was like, where did I lose this? Because as an adult, we eat at lunchtime, breakfast time, we eat by the clock, we eat by our breaks. We're not in tune with our hunger at all. But that's a story for another day. But I can see,
Right.
learning money, learning confidence, learning ambition from our children can be, in both aspects. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we could have a million conversations, but
totally. I forgot to look when we started, but I'll have to wrap this up soon. But
yeah, I have
before
no
we
idea what time was.
yeah, no, neither did I, because I was like, oh, I should have, and I'm looking down at the clock now, which is not helping because I didn't note the start time. Before we finish up, there's two things I wanted to ask. One is, if people were like, back to when you said write down a list of like all the things you've done, would you recommend they do that for a day or for like a week?
It varies. I have clients who like daily send me an email with the list of, and I have them mark things off that are income producing or not, or sometimes they're working on other things, they'll have them indicate. It's just helpful because it's like when someone tells you, I want to see which is which, it makes you start thinking about during your day, like, oh, I better have something on there.
Yeah.
I'm
And I
going to be
really like
sending it.
that. It's something I talk about with my clients too. If we don't have data, then we can't change it. So when you do any sort of tracking, time tracking, I don't encourage like food diary, but you might want to, have an idea.
Right.
Once you have data, then you can go, oh, okay. Because the thing is, if you said to me, write out the things that are income producing, because even that, I might highlight the things and then and go, is it really? Like, is it really? Because sometimes people might think writing a blog is income producing because it's, contributing to the content. But anyway, so I was just thinking tips for people who are watching it. So if they wrote down like everything they did in a day, because I suppose the other thing you can do once you've got that is, I call it do, delegate, ditch. So it could be like some of these things could be delegated, or ditched, because I don't know about you, but sometimes some of the stuff I've been doing it because I've been doing it, but does it actually contribute to business or life, or is it just become a habit?
Yeah.
Especially with all the things there are like automations and stuff now that you can have stuff just anyway. So for takeaways for people, if they wrote a list of everything they did, like at the end of the day, like for a week or something, and then highlighted or circled which of those were income producing, just to get an idea, not to judge, not to shame, not to guilt, but to go, okay, this is where it's standing, because that can be a total eye-opener. It sounds like such a simple exercise, but I'm sure many people would get such value from doing that.
Yeah, sometimes I've had clients say, well, can I mark the ones that are possibly income producing? So we'll use a different color, It's like,
that's a good idea, because a blog could be, because it's contributing to your,
right.
That's great.
And I wouldn't want to discourage that, but and so it's nice to delineate too. Like, yeah, these things have potential. They're not there yet. So because those are good things to do too, as long as you also have things that are solidly income producing in there on that list as well.
Yeah. And I think the other thing by doing that is we realize how much emotional labor we have, not to get down on ourselves, not to beat ourselves up, but sometimes, like, I know I get to the end of the day and I think I've done nothing. And it's like when I write it out, it's like, paid a bill, followed up an appointment, all that sort of stuff. It does count, but it's like, so now I starting this time batching. So Wednesdays is now going to be Tuesdays, is the day I pay the bills, respond, do the midweek grocery shop, do all those like odds and sods. So because then it's batched into a window of time, it's done. Because otherwise it can leach out and take up, it becomes busy. Whereas I think if you've allowed for it and given a time frame, it can be counted as productive.
Yeah. Friday morning is my time. That's family administration time. Friday morning. That's when I do
family
mine.
Administration. I'm gonna have to borrow that. That's a nice title. What are you doing today? Family administration.
Yes, I'm the family administrator.
So thank you so much, Laura. Just before we finish up, where can people find you if they want to know more about what you do and read up on the stuff that you offer?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm changing all of those things right now. And I'm getting a website. It's in production. I don't have one yet. I haven't really needed one all these years, but now I've decided I want one.
It's
and yeah, it's time. I have a newsletter that I send out, not as often as I should, but but I have one that I do send out.
Sweet. I'll grab the links and I'll put them in the video description. So if you want to, lovingly stalk Laura on socials, just scroll up or down, depending on where you're watching this, and grab the links. It's been so awesome. We'll have to do this again. We've ended up in lots of different pockets. I'm sure we'll have more that we can discuss.
We have a lot more to talk about.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Bye.
Bye.